Up back there, that's fine. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and start our work session. Only thing we're doing today is agenda review. First thing that we will have will be the minutes. If anybody has anything they want to talk about the minutes from the last meeting. We're going to have a couple of presentations to a couple of the police officers, normal staff reports, and then a couple of public hearing items. We had talked about both the Merrill project and the creative, thank you, the Hamlet, with respect to the fact that the Planning Commission had deferred action on those because of the traffic reports coming in so close to the last meetings. And we've been talking about the idea that we should probably defer as well until we hear from the Planning Commission. So I'm going to ask for a motion when we get to those to defer both of those to the next month, subject to getting the recommendations from the Planning Commission. That's not something we have to do, but it's the right thing to do from a process perspective. And
we're still waiting on some information for the Merrill one, is it?
That's right.
Okay.
And what was I going to say? There was a train of thought that was, oh, we're still going to have the public hearings because the public hearings have been advertised. And so that's going to happen as it would anyway. And we can obviously talk about them too if there's anything to talk about, but that's what we're going to do action wise, unless anybody has a problem with that.
No, that's fine.
Mike, do you want to talk about those three sorry, I will move over in front of my microphone.
When's the public hearing? Is that the same day as November 16th? Same day.
The Planning Commission meeting is the 16th, right?
16th.
Okay.
At 6:30, right? That's when there's.
Yeah. Planning Commission hearings on both these first two applications. The 16th, Thursday, a week from tonight, 6:30 p.m. That's right. And those are public hearings. Public comment is invited and welcome. So the first one, the proposed village, proposed by Harrison Merrill. I think I'm going to just read what I have here. Harrison Merrill of WHM Chattahoochee Hills Investments, LLC, has requested a rezoning of 526 acres from RL Rural to VL Village. The application consists of 7 parcels surrounding the intersection of Cochrane Mill Road and South Fulton Parkway. The entire property lies within the future development map's preferred village area. It has roughly a mile of frontage on each side of Cochrane Mill Road and on each side of South Fulton Parkway, with almost 1,000 feet on Wilkerson Mill Road, east of Cochrane Mill Road, and an additional 2,000 feet plus feet of frontage on both sides of Rico Tatum Road on the west side of Cochrane Mill Road. There's a city-owned cemetery that interrupts the Cochrane Mill frontage south of the Parkway, and that cemetery is not a part of the rezoning application. The property is undeveloped and wooded. On the east side, a large Bach culvert runs under South Fulton Parkway, providing an opportunity for pedestrian and equestrian connection between northeastern and southeastern quadrants of the property. Bordering directly to the north is Cochrane Mill Park on both sides of Cochrane Mill Road. To the west is an undeveloped acreage owned by Carl Buchart. To the south is undeveloped land in the city of Palmetto, also owned by the applicant, the Merrills. To the east, on the north side of the parkway, is a large undeveloped parcel owned by Fulton County. So that's also south of the park, but east of the subject property. To the east, on the south side of the parkway, is the Bear Creek mixed-use hamlet and the Wilkerson Mill Gardens property. So that mixed-use hamlet, obviously hamlet, not RL, which changes the buffering requirements at that boundary. The Bear Creek hamlet is zoned HMMU, and the rest of the adjacent Chat Hills property is zoned RL, rural. The property directly to the south in the city of Palmetto has been the subject of 2 DRI reviews, one of them within the last year. The concept plan included in the submittal shows 56% of the property protected as open space and civic space. It also shows the required 150-foot buffers with a proposed hamlet above the RL district and 300-foot buffers along South Fulton Parkway as required. The first phase of the development is proposed for the northeast quadrant, abutting Cochrane Mill Park, with a plan showing 2 entrances on Cochrane Mill Road and 41 residences, a mix of attached and detached homes, and a collection of small commercial buildings situated around an outdoor gathering space. The applicant calls the hub. The total number of residential units proposed is 2,000, which exceeds the minimum required by the UDC for a village. This density would require the purchase of development rights through the TDR program, permanently protecting rural land outside of the village district. The property is the location of a multi-use trail segment programmed in the Regional Transportation Improvement Program and identified in the Path Foundation's 2003 Chattahoochee Hill Country Regional Greenway Trail Master Plan. The segment runs from Cockrell Mill Park through the box culvert under the South Fulton Parkway, continuing south through the city of Palmetto property, eventually to Hutchinson Ferry Road via Phillips Road. The proposed village is currently undergoing DRI review, and that's actually technically still true. We do not yet have the final Greta notice of decision. Council members received what we believe to be the final draft. We do not have their signed version of it yet. In fact, we communicated with them by email today, and apparently GDOT still needs to sign off on it. That's what they're waiting for. The result will be provided when available. The proposed development is well hidden behind buffers, provides over 250 acres of open space on site, and creates demand for 1,474 TDRs, thereby permanently protecting additional land in the rural district. When considering both on-site and off-site preservation, the effective preservation ratio of the project is greater than 86%. Staff recommendation is for deferral. Because of for multiple reasons. One, because of the Planning Commission deferral, but also because since we don't have that final NOD, City Council shouldn't act at risk of the city's qualified local government status. Deferral. And there are a set of recommended conditions in the packet. If it were to be approved, we recommend approval with those conditions. I expect, though, next time you see this, the conditions will have some significant changes in it. So keep your eyes open for that when that comes back around. So yes, this will be public hearing, and we have the applicant here. If anybody has questions for them.
So Mike, I don't know if you've discussed this yet, but and it's not part of phase one. It's on the opposite side on Cochrane Mill Road. Let's see if I get the directions right. South of the South Fulton Parkway.
Mhm.
There seems to be a boatload of road cuts. Am I counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Right.
Between there and Wilkerson Mill Road, is there any way to, and it looks like it's just because it's a traditional design. I know the design is a placeholder until they actually get the developer going to do it.
Right.
But can we specify fewer road cuts? I mean, that's a little on the crazy side.
You could at your option. I think with the density of the development that's planned behind there, it could help alleviate issues at the individual intersections if there are quite a few of them there. The DRI went through with all those intersections, shown the traffic plan included all those. I think that the farthest to the north but south of the parkway, it's only on the west side, might make sense to go ahead and get rid of that one. It's running through the parkway buffer. I don't see any real need for it, except it completes that block up there that the designers put in. But I think that there's room for so when they actually propose a specific development at that site, we can I think maybe address that question unless you wanted to condition the plan.
Could you make a note to ask the Planning Commission to consider that? And then also, I had that issue before on the north side of South Fulton Parkway, opposite phase one. They have another road cut that looks like it could line up with that smaller. I don't know if that's a trail access or actually two roads on phase one.
Right. So yeah, phase one, it shows an entrance to that phase, a single main road entrance that goes back into the residential area on the other side of the creek. There's also a direct driveway access shown that goes to that parking lot for the
Trail users.
For the commercial uses there. That's a real good question, whether both of those entrances are beneficial or if it could be limited.
Those would be okay if they would align the one on the opposite side of the road and it doesn't look like the topography is better in one location than the other.
Right. The DRI addressed that, also suggested aligning them if it's possible, and it looks like it probably is. That'll be an engineering question probably when it finally comes down to it, but you're absolutely right about the alignment.
That's all I had.
Anybody else have any questions or anything?
Can,
I'm sorry.
can we specifically ask for that NOD? I mean, I understood that the DRIs were not supposed to delay a review process, and they've
Right.
already done that twice.
Right. There's been some back and forth on this NOD. I would have thought we would have gotten it by now. Again, it's just, I think the only thing that they were waiting for at the time when I got the draft that I sent to council, which you got it the day we got it. I think the only thing they were waiting for is GDOT still at that point. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe that's the case. So, because Greta and ARC were done with their work on it and,
And GDOT doesn't
they-
normally change anything, but they have to sign off.
our new, right. So we have a new representative with Greta, who I was just introduced to by email a day or two ago, who seems very good with communication, very communication forward. She's emailed me a couple times since then. And when I inquired today, I mentioned that I had had some communication. She said that that she has inquired about it. And because I was asking about it for tonight's meeting, right? Whether anyway. She said that if they don't have it by Monday, she was going to, I don't remember what she said she was going to do, but something, she had Monday of some sort of benchmark for escalating, I guess, in some way.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mike, number 4 on the conditions, and I know this project is sort of scheduled out to take years
Right.
with various phases. So the site plans serving as the one that says the site plan will serve as the concept plan,
Okay.
and any departure would
Right.
require, so that's just the process that we're going to walk through when there's any departure from what we're looking at in the future, right?
That's right. So understanding that the conceptual, so I have other things to say on this before we move forward, because we have a new, the planning commission has asked for a little more detail. And I've gotten a draft from the applicants, just mostly just showing uses proposed for the different areas. And it will probably be that version of it that will be the concept plan. It's got a little bit more use detail than what you have in front of you right now. We just got that a couple days ago.
Okay.
But the conceptual plan, we acknowledge specifically is conceptual, right? So pieces can move around a little bit, but if they start to get where it feels like it's changing the concept, then it would have to come back to you. Planning commission always has a say in that because they have to approve the preliminary plat. So if I take them something on a preliminary plat and I think that it's not a change in concept, but they think it is, they'll send it back to you.
Okay.
And that's always our process.
Right.
So Mike, what was some of the recommendation from the planning commission that they wanted to see? And when do you think that the new final report would be in?
Yeah, I had hoped it would be here by now. The planning commission didn't outline any specific recommendations. They wanted to see that the notice of decision from Greta. I don't have any specifics from them. I wish I knew when it would be here. I had thought it would be here by now, especially when we got that final draft. I thought it was just going to the director's desk for signature. But I learned today that it was waiting for GDOT's approval. And they sent out, in fact, the person said that they have several sitting with GDOT right now that they're waiting for, but she was going to push on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mike, where are these 1,400 acres at?
1,400 acres. We don't know. They will purchase TDRs or DTCs from the city. Again, either TDRs on the open market or DTCs from the city, and it'll be in the rural district because that's a requirement for sending areas of TDRs. We think that the applicant is going to utilize one of the DTC programs, which will mean the city will be spending the money to preserve the land. We think that's what's going to happen. We don't have the final. The city. There's a requirement that the applicant enter into a development agreement covering how the TDRs are going to be handled. That has to happen before we issue any building permits there. And that will outline in the final form, what method of TDR or DTCs they will be using. But most of our conversations have revolved around the perpetual fee. So we don't know exactly where those acres will be, but they will be spent based on priorities set by the city. The funds that come in from that program will be spent.
Is that by the city that comes here to council?
Yes.
Mike, in the residential aspect of this thing, the 2,000 units. Are there, I don't do, as far as the details of what's actually going to be there, are there going to be any like built to rent type sections there to it or anything of that type?
I would expect there would be, yeah,
Okay.
some condos, maybe apartment buildings. I think most of the buildings will be larger buildings. They do show some single family in phase one. I think they have plans for single family elsewhere as well. But I think most of it will be in apartment and condo, sort of.
Do we know if there's gonna be like maybe an HOA or anything that's there to supervise the percentage of that or anything?
Oh, I see what you're
Yeah, yeah.
saying, converting things from build to own to build to rent. There will be an HOA. If you wanted, you could consider a condition for some of those ratios, maybe. But we don't have anything.
Well, there's nothing that we know anything about it, because I mean, I know a lot of, talking with a lot of realtors the last few months, especially seeing, how all this is fixed. Just come in so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a lot of concerns as to how some of these people are obtaining funding. And if there's any tax credits or anything involved with low income housing, that they might be utilizing as far as their
Right.
findings.
Right. So something about lower cost housing came up in one of the meetings. The applicant responded that they plan to have a mix of housing products, so not everything would be super expensive. But I did ask actually specifically at that time about whether anything would be, tax credit funding or anything. He said, no, nothing like that. They're not planning anything like that. They're planning on it's a good question for the applicant.
Right. I should have just,
But
right there.
Yeah. So we could address that directly to him, but they, I think they plan a mix of housing types and sizes, but not something that is outside of market rate housing.
Okay. And
Is
when
that-
you say,
Is that accurate? That is.
okay, so nothing that is gonna be outside of market rate, that would be hard to actually, there's gotta be some type of contingencies there as far as obtaining those credits, and then market rate being so high. I mean, if I understand the way that stuff works, I'm not familiar with it. But anyway, okay,
Our preservation requirements are expensive enough that it makes it hard actually for people to justify doing housing that is lower price. It's hard to recoup that.
Well, I think the thing I read was like debt-free housing. All I know about debt-free housing is it's, it's something I read, but I don't know how you build debt-free housing, because it is government funded. That's all I know. Comment.
okay.
Couple of things I just wanted to call out. There have been some questions about the way that the DRIs and the traffic studies work. Just some, concerns that we've got one here, we've got one there, and are they considering what's happening in the other one? And the answer to that is yes. All of the DRIs are cumulative. They look at not only what's been approved previously, but also growth trends that are happening anyway. They look at stuff outside of the city and inside, and they look at all the ones that they've done. So they all are cumulative. We had Chris Nelson in a couple of weeks ago. He's the guy that wrote both the Georgia impact fee law and also wrote one of the textbooks that people use talking about TDRs. And one of the interesting comments he made, he was doing he did a bunch of research on kind of our physical plant needs and the cost of development and what the likely uptake of the developments that are on our books are going to be, and forecasted out 20 years. And he said, looking at every single thing that's on the books 20 years from now, without widening any of our roads, we're still at service level A on all of the roads in the city. That's with everything that we're looking at, and that's just one of those comments that's interesting. Service level A means that you're basically never having to wait because there's a backup of traffic. And again, I know people look at that and shake their heads like, how can that possibly be? But you've got 700 homes in Serenbe right now, and all the traffic that causes. And I recognize there's more traffic on Hutchison Ferry than there used to be, but there's never a time where traffic is backed up and you can't get into an intersection or whatever. And again, I'm just putting that out there because that's one of those things that somebody who has an expertise in this particular thing said, looking at our actual data. So just an interesting tidbit. The other thing I wanted to point out was something that Mike said, and I don't want to gloss over this. Villages are intended to do most of their preservation externally, by virtue of the TDR program. So they're buying development rights externally to preserve land that is, you know, the rural area that we're wanting to protect. They don't do as much internal preservation, right? So again, I'm just responding to some threads where some people were saying, well, they're only doing 50% or 50, whatever it was. But the effective preservation, you factor in the amount of TDRs that you're gonna have to buy, is 86%. So it's far higher than the 70% that's our baseline. And I just, again, want people to be thinking about, you know, the reason that villages are even in the zoning is because they provide that benefit of external preservation. So.
Might add one more thing. I've heard some comments on the plan that they see and people perceive a lack of detail, except for in phase one. Just wanted to point out that this is a multi-generational project, as the applicant has said, and that as things change over time and as individual builders come in, things will be different. If they tried to provide additional detail at this point, it would be wrong, or even worse, maybe misleading. And so they have the buffers, and we control a lot of aspects of how things happen behind the buffer, despite the fact that when I got here, everyone's saying, we don't care what happens behind the buffers, we don't care what happens. We actually control a lot of that. And so it would all happen according to the rules about how things can develop behind the buffers.
All right, anything else on that one? If not, the next two, Mike, just go ahead and talk about those together, because the special use permit is just a part of the application.
Okay, great. So this is Creative Land Company, mixed use hamlet and a special use permit for a hotel, which would be within the hamlet. Again, I'll read some notes on this. Lauren Gerwich of Creative Land Company LLC has requested rezoning of 265 acres from RL Rural to HMMU mixed use hamlet, and for a special use permit for a hotel. The property is a single 265 acre parcel between Cochrane Mill Road to the east and Creel Road on the west and Cedar Grove Road to the north. The property is almost entirely wooded with some trails and small clearings cut in by a previous owner. The surrounding property is residential or vacant. To the north across Cedar Grove Road is the Heatherwood Manor neighborhood. The city of South Fulton is across Cochrane Mill Road to the east, and a pair of occupied single-family lots bordering the property directly to the northeast are in the city of South Fulton, meaning directly bordering, not across the road. There's an odd boundary between the cities there, so there's a little bit of South Fulton that touches the property on that side of Cochrane Mill Road. All of the adjacent Chattahoochee Hills property is zoned RL rural. The concept plan shows 71% of the property protected as open space and civic space, and it shows the required 150-foot buffers where the proposed hamlet borders the RL district. Again, they borders city of South Fulton, and some of that, so we don't have that 150-foot buffer requirement there, but they're showing 50-foot buffers in those locations. The first phase of development includes its main entrance on Cochrane Mill Road and 20 single-family homes on the eastern corner of the property. Phase two adds more residential and the first half of the hamlet's community core. Further phases round out the core and extend the single-family residential to the west across the creek and then to the north. The total number of residential units proposed is just over 600, which would require the purchase of development rights through the TDR program, permanently protecting rural land outside of the hamlet. The plan does a great job clustering its proposed development, preserving a large contiguous area of open space on the western portion of the property, which is a good model for other development in the city. The 70% preservation requirement would result in a minimum 185.5 acres of open space and civic space to be preserved or protected within the district. They also propose maximizing the allowable purchase of TDRs, which means purchasing an additional 265 development rights through the TDR program. So the resulting on-site and off-site preservation would be over 450 acres with a development footprint of about 80 acres, which is an effective preservation ratio of 85%. The plan includes an inn at the northern end of the third phase of the development in the hamlet. This requires a special use permit for a hotel. The inn site is behind the district buffers, of course, and is surrounded on 3 sides by open space. Staff recommendation, again, due to planning commission action, would be to defer. Again, as we've said, there's a hearing in 1 week, 6:30 on the 16th. And again, there are some conditions attached to this one, recommended conditions to consider as well. So when if you choose to approve, we recommend approval with conditions. Any questions?
Just again, you know, there's been one of these things again that I just want to make sure everybody understands. Special use permits are nothing like variances. special use permits are for things that are allowed in a place, but might need extra thought, public safety thought or whatever. And so there's a process by which those get approved inside of a development or even outside of a development. But it's not a variance, it's something that's allowed, just requires extra conversation. Sorry, questions, anybody?
Are we missing any information from this since you wrote the?
No, we have the final notice of decision from Greta and the final report from ARC. Those are both in the package.
And those all show pretty minor impact.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else? No? All right, next up is the thing about the commissions, and I think can be on them that we have to redo because of the timing. Anybody have anything else to talk about that? We've talked about it 30 times. Next up is 23-055. Mike just got comfortable in his chair again.
That's right. This one is a first read for a project called Arosa Grove. It is a 210.72 acre proposed mixed-use hamlet. It's located between Campbellton Red Wine Road and Caps Ferry Road, just a little south of the intersection of those roads, just a little south of the Parkway. And has frontages on both Campbellton Red Wine and Caps Ferry. Caps Ferry is an unpaved road. The surrounding property is mostly vacant and wooded, with a small number of single-family homes on large lots adjacent across Caps Ferry Road. Notably, there's an occupied 10-acre parcel on Caps Ferry Road that is surrounded on 3 sides by the proposed development. You can see the inset obviously on the plan. And there is a cemetery adjacent to the proposed development on Campbellton Red Wine Road, and a little bit of the cemetery apparently laps into the property. That would all, of course, be a part of the buffer in the plan for the property, so it wouldn't be impacted by development. I will note too, the frontage on Caps Ferry Road, where those roads are gravel, is divided by that inset 10-acre property. There's a road connection only on the southern frontage. It's proposed that connection is gravel only, and the applicant actually has proposed a condition in consultation with expressions of concern from the city about that, and it's the condition, if adopted, would limit the road to emergency vehicle or bike ped equestrian use, not vehicle use, so people wouldn't be coming in and out of that onto the gravel roads all the time. So that only the Campbellton Red Wine entrances, 2 entrances, would be used. And I'll note too that the Campbellton Red Wine entrances will require GDOT approval, since that's a GDOT road. The plan for the project includes 210 residential units, along with an 8,450 square feet of retail, restaurant, commercial space, a pair of amenities buildings, and a barn, some stables, and an outdoor riding arena. Those are all located near the entrances on Caps Ferry Road. And then the more cottage lots and estate lots extend into the larger part of the property to the west. And they are showing the required 150-foot buffer around the entire periphery.
Mike, about that 150-foot buffer, it looks like trails are in it, and that's an approved use, right?
Mhm.
But where it circles a 10-acre private property, I'd like to consider a condition that they actually put a physical fence there, because they're going to be using it, I guess, for equestrian and their internal use. And I think we owe it to that property owner to make sure that there's no unintentional trespassing on their property.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll write that down.
Couple of things just to be clear. The very original conversation, typically in a development like this, if there's another road that is adjacent, you require connectivity. We require connectivity for public safety access. When the developer first came in on this one, they had gravel roads going to Caps Ferry on both sides, but we reminded them that we don't really allow access from this kind of intensity onto gravel roads. We do need the public safety access. And that's why they changed it to this layout where we do have, back access for a fire truck or whatever, but it's not vehicular in and out. So it's not going to impact the gravel road. That's one of the things that from the very beginning, protecting our gravel roads is a big deal.
They also moved the houses back.
They did, they moved the
Yeah.
houses back. The other thing too is there have been some comments that I agree with, that it's not quite as clustered as we would ordinarily like. A lot of that is because of the topo. You've got several stream beds that go through and, that makes it a little bit harder to cluster. And I guess that's really my only comment about the plan itself.
What are those cottage lots? They're quarter acre or so?
At the sizes of cottage lots quarter. Okay.
Okay.
And the applicant, by the way, has prepared some renderings. If you all want to see them, I don't know if you would want to do it now or later or neither. We have them though, if you're interested in taking.
Yeah, Mike, a question about the, and I forget what you call it before, but when we were talking about another development that had farming type use and the number of connected uses versus the clustered
Oh, the
thing,
clustering. Mhm.
does this meet that number? Because
It does, it
okay,
does, yeah.
just wanted to check.
Yeah, it just requires that they be in at least groups of 3 that are actually touching.
Okay.
Also, in that impacts, the traffic study that was done, it said 5% use on that back gravel road. That's just emergent. Is
I
that,
think that happened before they made the change. Yeah.
okay, so it's even less than,
It's zero.
okay.
Good point.
Mike, is there any plan for any community meetings to kind of show this to the people in the area?
You're welcome to respond to anything. Always a good idea.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Jessica Hill. I'm representing the property owner and applicant. We did send out letters to every property owner that immediately abuts the property, as well as all of the property owners on Caps Ferry and across the street on Campbellton Red Wine. I received a couple of phone calls from people asking me about the hearings and just asking me generally about the plan. But there was no request to meet from anybody that we received. So there's no community meeting proposed. But again, we did send out letters with a copy of the site plan and notifying everybody and asking them to give me a call.
I think you might be wise to schedule one anyway.
Right.
Okay,
Just, here at City Hall, invite whoever to come or out there somewhere, but just to allow the opportunity for a more casual conversation.
sure.
You
Happy to
might
do
not
it.
get a whole lot of people showing up, but at least you've
At
done
least
that.
you had it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody? Again, it's just a first read tonight, gets it on the docket kind of. The next one is a historic marker content approval. And Brian, are you going to talk to us about that? Or? Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Both
I
of
didn't
us.
see you were there.
So thank you all for the support on the first marker that we just got installed a month ago. And I think some of you were able to be there for the unveiling. We appreciate your support in that. This is number 2. Is all in your packets. And if you've got specific questions, we'll be happy to try to answer them.
Some comments. I love how you've written this. And I saw the first draft last year and I wasn't sure because the National Register lists this as John F. Beavers. But as you know, there's really no solid evidence that he even lived there. So to give the solid evidence and then to also acknowledge the Lee family that lived there for so long. This is just wonderfully written and I really appreciate the effort.
We spent a enormous amount of time going through records that quite frankly weren't very good. They're very limited. And we felt after multiple internal iterations of this content, we unanimously felt this was the right way to reflect the history and the ownership of the 3 families. That there were other owners over the years, but the 3 families that occupied and lived on the property. and made changes to the property as well.
I'll say this again later when you guys come up to talk about this in the meeting. But I love the first sign. I mean, it's such a cool thing. We talked about this before. When I was a little boy, didn't matter where we were, my dad would go swinging across 6 lanes of traffic, look at every one of those. And that's exactly how I remember them. And I love it. I appreciate this. I really do.
Any other question?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Robbie, is this next one you, the DMO thing?
Yes,
More actions. Chattahoochee Hills designated marketing organization that we have now as a result of the hotels in Serenbe and such. So the CBB met last month on October 19th, and we're meeting again next Wednesday. And they're going to talk more about the DMO members. So the DMO, and Rick, of course, helped me out a lot with this. It consists of 3 directors, and 1 director is appointed by the CBB. And 1 director is appointed by the mayor and council, and another director is appointed by the members of the DMO. And the members are those that sign up and to be members, like a Chamber of Commerce type of deal. And I think I got about 5 people now because we meaning Dana, sent out letters to business license holders that were pertaining to tourism type products. So we got those individuals that are interested in not serving, but being part of that. And they're going to, once they get together, they'll appoint that 3rd member. But this process is the council has to appoint a member to be, or a director, I'm sorry. So I think I'm correct, right? So, people have been leaning toward me as the obvious choice, or just the city manager in general to hold that spot. So whoever that is me today. So that's good. And that would be the DMO would be set in place, and we'll talk about the process later and what they do. But my thought process is, the 1.5% they collect to turn that over to the CBB for tourism spending. But what we have to do now is the council has to appoint somebody officially to that, and it could be anybody. It could be the economic development director that we're getting ready to hire that you guys authorized a couple of months ago.
Is the appointment for a year or can it?
It's a
change?
year.
And when do you have to have the name for the person from us?
By the council.
Yeah.
I can,
It's kind of-
the sooner the better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I need to get the 501c4 designation for this. And I can't do that until I have the 3 names of the director. So it doesn't have to be tonight. It'd be great if it was tonight, but please don't make it past December because
You
I'm
got
really trying to get it
recommendations,
done.
I mean, I would name, not my name, but I would name some sort of position that makes sense to serve on that, like the city manager or his or her designee. Because then I can designate if hey, the economic development director, you do this now.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then
makes
that way,
sense to me as well.
Right. So I'll designate Greg Brett.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding, but I could.
So should we just make a motion to that effect?
You did one
tonight?
It'd be the city manager or his or her designee. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Anybody have any other thoughts on that?
Sounds good.
I'm just glad we're getting one. I know a lot about the DMOs as well, so.
And then the next thing is the donation of a surplus 94 Pierce Saber fire tanker to the mayor. Did I read that right? Huh? Oh, yes, to the mayor.
no, we're
No.
surpassing the
Oh, I
figure.
read
No,
it, sorry.
okay.
Donating.
I think we pulled that card. Have a siren.
This is the Pierce Saber we purchased from the city of Newnan. It's a 29-year-old unit. We've held it for 9 years. And after 2 years of attempting to have it pass the NFPA 1901 requirement, which is the minimum pumping capacity of 750 gallons per minute, it can't pass. Which means that translates into extensive pump rebuild and overhaul. At the age, and given that NFPA says that a fire truck should be retired completely from a frontline pumping responsibility. After 25 years, then I don't see benefit in retaining it.
Right. It would cost more to fix it.
It costs a lot more to fix it, and still, you've got a 29-year-old apparatus with undercarriage and suspension, everything beginning to fail. Or more likely to fail, I should say. So the request is to surplus it so that we can utilize normal city process to try to get something for it, take it off our inventory.
All right. Anybody else have anything before we pause for the meeting that's starting here shortly? If not, work
Not.
session's over, and we will see you at 6 for the council meeting.
Okay.
There's cake.
Yep.
Yeah.